Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your... Thank you. Please stand by. You will now be placed into conference. There are 26 participants in the conference.
As a public citizen and somebody that's not in the industry, to keep track. I love the website. It's very informational, and because of what's been going on, we try to track as much as we can. It's hard to know if you're going to meet the deadline or not, and yes, I am financially interested as a property owner. By the same token, I was referred to as a politician yesterday that is party of the lawsuit, and I'm not. I recently got elected to the city council. I am fair and I'm honest, and I don't like what's been going on, and I appreciate what you've said, and I will be back in December. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for the record, I don't recall calling you a politician. Not a word I usually throw around. Thank you.
All right. We voted on the motion.
So I had made a motion for an executive session. I'm going to withdraw that motion.
That's fine. All right. Next up, Lady Gray.
Jan Holstein, attorney for Lady Gray Medibles.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, so you've got a fairly broad spectrum application here. Let's go to the director first, because there's some complexity to it, and there's some things that the director has approved in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will give you a broad overview, and I'm hoping Ms. Oates can help fill in some of the details as, we all work on these things, them with me most of the time. So the licensee has requested to make a number of changes, and you can see those. You go to the second section of the portfolio called Amendments to Products Temporarily Approved PDF, and start on page 4. You can see that there's a number of changes requested, and at times some of those changes are, let's see, okay, so there's the CBD oil issue. I know we talked about that at the last meeting. There are, maybe it'd be better for Ms. Welty to run through the changes. She's going to be a lot more familiar with them than I am.
So these were broken up into 2 separate categories. One where the director gave a temporary approval for a group of products, and then another one where we didn't get temporary approval because the staff and the director had questions for, the board and whether or not you wanted to do those products. So the second tab is the one that Director McConnell was just talking about, and those are the ones that were temporary approved. So Keef, we just added a 0.5 gram increment, because before we just had gram increments. So it's just a size change to be able to package in 0.5 grams. Banana chocolate chip muffins, we added CBD oil as a change. Based on last discussion from last meeting, we retracted that request, and then we updated the name to allergen-friendly banana chocolate chip muffins, which is different from what you previously approved. We updated the ingredients, as you'll see on the actual MJ15. We added single and double sizes. We updated the packaging material from exit bags to Mylar bags. We updated labeling to remove advice about edibles. And Tasha's going to be preparing informational sheets to retailers to help educate their customers, but took that packaging off the packaging, took it off the packaging. Included Added to include manufactured at a shared facility because of things about allergies when you're using different equipment. So like peanuts, you know, you've got to say that on the actual packaging. Updated, keep frozen when ready to enjoy. Updated, keep frozen when ready to enjoy, allow to come to room temp or warm it up. To keep frozen, thaw when ready to enjoy. Once thawed, enjoy within 3 days. Because once you thaw it, it has a shorter shelf life. Removed the line vegan, paleo, dairy-free, gluten-free, grain-free options available, as it caused some confusions as to whether or not that product specifically was all of those things. Vegan, paleo, dairy-free, and assume, yeah, that's right, I just went over that, I'm sorry. And updated the processing section of the label to reflect production batch numbers and realistic edibles information. Can you pound on that?
Well, just the original application, their harvest batch instead of production batch,
right,
which is kind of an oversight.
Yeah, it was not correct, and so we just updated it. So did you have any questions about that banana chocolate chip mini muffin?
Yeah, what does paleo mean?
Grain-free. Grain-free. So that's that one. And then similar to the next product, banana chocolate chip walnut muffins, CBD oil was pulled out of our request. Changing the serving sizes, updating the packaging, updating the label to remove advice about edibles. Same changes for the keep frozen when ready as above. Again, remove the vegan, paleo, dairy-free, gluten commentary because it was just confusing to folks. And then same thing to reflect production batch versus harvest batch on the label. Any questions?
All of these, what we're going over right now, are ones that have basically been approved by the office.
Given temporary approval.
Temporary approval.
So very similar to Blueberry Dream. Nothing is different that we did above to these changes. Mocha walnut muffins, same changes. Raw-licious brownies, same changes. Rosin, we wanted to add a 1/3 packaging size, so now it's going to be ability to sell rosin in 1/3 of a gram, 1/2 of a gram, then 1 gram. And also change the packaging to add the ability to put another cultivator's logo on the packaging. Canna caps, remove the CBD request and updated packaging and change the serving size or the serving packages from, yep.
Okay. You, on rosin and the one right above it, you said CBD oil may not be used as an ingredient. That's all in red. Please remove it from the narrative page. Then you go down, you say updating product description and ingredients to include additional, and then in red it says CBD as an option. Are you telling me red has been removed from that, or?
Right, I'm sorry, this is the incomplete letter, so it was the things that Jane at the office wanted us, the red is the incomplete, responsible wants us to take it out, which we did, and that's.
Okay, because I didn't see it on the other one, just this one in rosin, in which it basically, you know, or the canna caps, you get down, it says to include additional CBD. So if it's in red, that's telling me it's being deleted?
Yeah, because we did not get approval for that. Okay. And until this
board... It's just confusing, because it's updating the ingredients to include, and the only thing that changes is color. You know, without some description that if it's in red, it's being removed. So I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly. Right,
and so I guess I should have gone from our MJ15, but this letter is from AMCO, and it just says at the very top page, you know, dear licensee, the following amendments to products have been temporarily approved with some changes to your proposal indicated in this letter, and those are red.
Thanks.
Cannabis coconut oil updated, labeling to reflect it's in-house only, and then cannabis butter, same change. And then below, there's a couple additional products that got temporary approval. This is the next page where it goes Lady Gray Medible's temp approved products is our response to this incomplete letter where we implemented the changes and removed the CBD references. That makes sense. But there's also an Almond Joyfuls, which is a different product that wasn't addressed in the letter before. That got temporary approval, right? It's in the temporary approved.
Because it's also in the not approved.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's the board's discretion on whether or not you'd like to approve it at the end of the day. But if you go down, that's the only one that's not in the letter above. So I'm guessing that was just an oversight. I think maybe that was supposed to be in the not temporarily approved batch. It was in both, wasn't it?
I mean,
Yeah.
It's not in our letter.
So Jane included it in both, and I don't recall why.
If our letter starts on page 3, I don't see it in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure because it's in there, but we'll just assume it's not temporarily approved. And
Mr. Chair, I think I understand what's going on. So I can tell what is stuff that was sent by our office and what is stuff that was received by our office because when we receive things, we put a date stamp on the lower right corner. So what page number is it? So the first part that Jana was reading was an incomplete letter from our office saying you need to make changes. The pages immediately after that, where the Almond Joyfuls thing is where Jana made those changes that Jane had requested, but she made the changes to like her original letter, which included both products that received temporary approval and products that didn't receive temporary approval. So just because this section is here because it's on the page of the operating plan changes that were requested by Jana. So if you just want to make it clear when you make a motion that your motion will not be including the Almond Joyfuls would be helpful.
maybe I just want that in there accidentally. Maybe I thought that was approved temporarily. So I guess the first step would be to approve all the temporary approved products, Almond Joy out, and then we can go to the other products that were not approved with temporary approval.
This makes sense. Okay.
I would work off the list starting on page 4 from our letter.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the...
Yep, because the Almond Joyfuls are in the
So the temporarily approved amendments to products right after memo.
Your licensee
So-
following amendments to your products have been temporarily approved pending board review and approval.
Starting on page 4 of that second portfolio.
Yeah. Starts with, yeah, right? Yeah.
Yes, starts with Keith.
Okay. So, I would motion to approve excluding Almond Joyfuls, as referenced in the letter to the licensee, to approve Keith, banana chocolate chip muffins, banana chocolate chip walnut muffins, blueberry dream muffins, mocha walnut muffins, Rawlicious brownie, rosin, cannabis caps, cannabis coconut oil, cannabis butter.
Here, just for the heck of it, why don't you separate out rosin, cannabis caps, coconut oil? Because those are just, it may take
Because
2
they're
seconds
different.
to do that. Yeah, just break those out.
Okay. So I'd amend the motion to not include cannabis caps, cannabis coconut oil, and cannabis butter.
And rosin. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Miller. Is there any discussion on this? And the motion incorporates the changes that are requested by the office that the licensee has already said that they've met. And so these are all edible products, and they're, just to reiterate, I don't think that there's any, there's no changes to ingredients, except excluding CBD oil.
Correct.
Yeah. But these are all packaging and labeling changes. So, any additional discussion on these items? Okay, all those in favor of approving Keef banana chip mini muffins, banana chip walnut muffins, blueberry dream muffins, mocha walnut muffins, and raw licious brownies. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we'll do rosin cannabis capsule.
And Mr. Chair, a motion to approve product rosin.
Oh, we could do all four of them, but that's... All right, there's a motion to approve rosin. Is there a second?
Second.
And this is just adding a 1/3 of a gram package and some logo. So any discussion on this one? You know, all those in favor of approving rosin, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next is cannabis caps.
Mr. Chair, motion to approve cannabis caps.
Okay. Second. All right, and this just changes the serving size, and we can include CBD in this one. It says update the ingredients to include additional CBD.
Again, is that in red?
That's stricken. Red.
Oh, that means it's...
I'm sorry. Okay, so we take that out. All right, any other discussion on cannabis caps? Okay, all those in favor of approving cannabis caps changes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes. And coconut oil and cannabis butter.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, motion to approve cannabis coconut oil and cannabis butter.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, these are in-house products. Any discussion on those two items? Okay, all those in favor of approving the operating plan change for cannabis oil, coconut oil and cannabis butter, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, which brings us to amendments to products not temporarily approved.
Mr. Chair, and Ms. Valtine can jump in if she disagrees, but a lot of the changes are similar to the ones that were temporarily approved, things about serving sizes and packaging and labeling. So I don't know if it's necessary for anyone to walk you through those, but I would like to highlight, and I apologize earlier, I have now reoriented myself to this. I would like to mention specifically what concerned the office about these particular issues. So looking at that third tab in the portfolio, the almond joyfuls, the desire to create these with a variety of ingredients, dried fruits and nuts, under the same product. If you look at the, let me open this in a separate tab. So if you look at page 7, they propose various flavor combinations with various nut and fruit combinations, such as almond joyfuls, peanut butter and jelly joyfuls, strawberry cheesecake joyfuls, pecan pie joyfuls, chocolate hazelnut joyfuls, and apple chai joyfuls. So the ingredients for each of these items are, they vary, and we felt that these were some number of different products and not all one product with just some changes. There have been, so this is the kind of umbrella category that has been mentioned. There have been some products that the board has approved in the past, and I'm particularly thinking of, some hard candy proposals of various licensees where they have said that they would have different flavors in the hard candy, and that has been approved as one product. But to the staff, our feeling is that this is so different for each of these that these really are separate products. So that's the concern with almond joyfuls. That's the concern with most of these, with the fruit leather, with the buttermints. You can see that the next proposal is to combine 3 already approved products, 3 different types of, a hazelnut spread, a peanut butter, a chocolate peanut butter, and a cinnamon raisin almond butter, things that really are quite different, into one umbrella category as one product. So these were concerns that the staff had and that the board's going to have to make a ruling on. We have a lot of, I know Ms. Oates may have had other things to say about this, but nope, she doesn't. Those were our concerns, that these really are different products.
Thank you. And Tasha, do you want to say a little bit about the reasoning of why you feel we should get this flexibility within the products?
Yeah, I've been following, with things that have been approved, and that's kind of where I saw some flexibility with some of the flavor variations, and some that have been approved that just says comparable ingredients. So I feel like an almond is comparable to a cashew, a date is comparable to a dried cherry. They're still going to look very similar. They're going to be in the same serving sizes, and it's just kind of an effort to not bog everyone down with everything being individually approved. We do all of our labeling and packaging in-house, too, and there have been approvals for flavor variations, and I felt like I took it a step further to be transparent with showing you some of the flavor variations and how that would be applicable on the label. It comes as a joyful, and then underneath would be an almond joyful or a pecan pie joyful. I just felt like that made sense.
And, I looked up the FDA packaging guide, and for the most part, if it's a natural flavoring, it says, natural flavorings, colorings, those kinds of things. They're not specifically identified as blue 6 or yellow 5 or whatever the corresponding number is. So this really is, it is taking it a step further, but that's why the staff wanted to bring it to this board is this how we want to see some of these things get a bit more streamlined? Is everything's the same except for the packaging has a different identification of what kind of, nut it is. But other than that, that's the only ingredients that are getting swapped out.
Yeah. And I do have a good working relationship with our DEC office, so I'm happy to stay in contact with them.
So usually we send DEC the entire MJ05s and then the MJ05 updates. A lot of times they want to see pictures of the actual labels and stuff like that.
Yeah, and everything goes to enforcement before it's put out.
Mr. Chair, I believe that enforcement has some concerns about this, and I don't know if they're on the phone or not, but their concerns, some of the concerns of the entire staff had to deal with enforceability, whether a product was actually approved or not. If you don't approve each individual product, it would be harder for a member of our enforcement team to walk into a retail store and be like, oh, well, is this a product that's been approved or not? And if the board does wish to start allowing for umbrella categories, I would first recommend that you open a regulation project that makes it clear, because the regulation does say that the board must approve each individual product. And also consider how broad you want to make those categories and set some pretty clear guidelines to the staff and the licensee, because that could be opening up you could be opening up Pandora's box.
And I think Sarah's comments are well received on this end, which is what we try to do by identifying the exact parameters of the umbrella, which would be, for joyfuls, PB&J joyful, strawberry cheesecake joyful, pecan pie joyful, hazelnut joyfuls, apple pie joyfuls, which each of those labels and actual products would be sent to enforcement before it goes out, and to DEC.
Mr. Chair. I could see where this could be acceptable if there were categories for it, like you see on labels something says may contain tree nuts or may contain berries. And so if there was a product that was basically all the same, the difference is that one might have almonds, one might have pecans, one might have figs, the other might have dates. I would be okay with that, but I do agree with Sarah in that maybe there has to be categories for that to fit in, because if we just say this is okay, we could either do it, for this particular licensee and then maybe have to do it for others, but how far down the road can you go and just, be leapfrogging ingredients? They've got it pretty clearly defined here, but we may actually need a project to allow that, like if something could just say quote-unquote nuts, we're assuming that any, tree nuts or legumes would be allowed, or if it says fruit. But yeah, I don't know if I'm comfortable with just saying we're going to allow these umbrellas as is, because I think we'll be dealing with a lot of umbrellas in the future as well. So.
And just speaking with my client, Sarah makes a good point about if we could amend the forms to have an identification of each sub-product. My client would be okay to wait for that form if we knew it was coming in December and got the rest of the changes, which are the packaging changes and label changes approved, if that would make it kind of easier for the staff, because I don't want them to get bogged down with crazy umbrella requests in the meantime.
You've got a couple of things on here that are, at least one that's doesn't say it's an edible.
That's already approved.
Okay.
It's
oh, really?
Yeah, the product's already approved.
This is the original. Okay, yeah.
The changes aren't.
Yeah, this is the original application. There's no changes to that to the spring product.
There is. There's variety of flavor and scent combinations, which I would hope would be okay, because that's just changing
But that's not an edible.
It could be.
Could be.
Mm-hmm.
But
could be.
However, it falls into the same category as hand cream stuff, I believe, in the same manner.
Yeah. Well, we didn't do the dosages like how you could do a hand cream dosages, because it could be.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is it might be easy for us to just at least approve this one here and get it out of the way.
Is that the Lady Gray's tincture?
No, it's the elation.
Where is that in the?
Oh, it's down. For some reason, this thing is not showing page numbers.
I'm not seeing
the
page
PDF
numbers
is
either.
not showing page numbers.
I think if you open it in a separate tab, like that sort of thing on the top right, it'll then show page numbers.
Open document.
Yeah, I found it.
Yeah, it's midway down. Yeah.
Okay. I found it.
And then the tincture, that is an edible, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. But the whole concept of an umbrella product and giving the manufacturer the leeway to kind of customize a product as they want, or as demand suits. On the one hand, it does make good business sense, but on the other hand, it does present a little bit of a regulatory conundrum for us, and we've already had the opportunity to do some regulatory conundruming at this meeting, and we kind of took a pass on it. So it does need some more consideration. Again, what will happen is if we approve this, then everybody else is going to come in and say, hey, yeah, good, I'm going to do it that way, and we've got to make sure that we're considering, particularly in the case of edibles, the public health and public safety. So, but on this elation product, since it's not an edible, there's no requirement as to the actual THC content in it, and I don't have any problem with giving the manufacturer some leeway on that, just to get it out the door. So, if somebody wants to make a motion on this one, we can talk about it for a second.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I motion to approve the product Elation. Second.
Okay, is there any, so what, there's a couple of and/ors in here, in the indictments, and that's the whole point.
Right, but it's different than the joyful.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Can you speak to the flavor?
Yeah, that would just be like what you've approved in the past for
Just
offering
essential
some
oil.
flexibility.
Yeah, just essential
Just
oil.
essential oil.
Yeah.
Or natural
Yeah.
flavor
Yeah.
extract.
Yeah. So,
So that's the same as the tincture too?
yeah, but the tincture is edible.
Yes.
I'm suggesting that this falls into the category of hand creams and topicals.
Mm-hmm.
It says topical. So, again, just to kind of get out of the way and to, I suppose, make us kind of force us into considering the umbrella issue a little bit more. So, is there any discussion on approving Elation and the changes that are in here? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor of approving Elation as a marijuana product, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it's 4-1. Mr. Jones in opposition. So now, everything else on here is a edible product, right?
Correct, but I would direct you to the tincture to look at it because it is the same kind of concept. It's essential oils that would change the flavor, like cinnamon or peppermint. That's the only thing that would change.
What do you do the tincture? Put it in your tongue? No. Yeah. Okay.
And also for that, it's an in-house product too. Yeah,
Oh,
it's used in the fruit leather.
Oh.
Right.
Okay. So any thoughts on what we can do with tincture?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve tincture.
Second.
And so, this is sort of along the vein, in my opinion, of like what we've done with the hard candies, whereas if the primary constituents are all remaining the same, the only thing that's actually changing is a flavoring, which is essentially it's going to be some sort of essential oil. Other than the only difference is actually going to be in the sense of taste. That's not going to appear any different, doesn't have any different molecular weight, doesn't look any different, you know. And I would think as far as enforcement's concerned, they could look at these and be like, these all look like the exact same product, except this one's jasmine flavored, this one's peach flavored, you know. But when you look at the ingredients, they all say the exact same thing on the back. So I don't think it's a stretch for us to allow this.
You know, I wonder if, just sort of an aside under debate, if maybe we should consider attaching some kind of a approval number to products, so that suppose in December of 2019 we said, okay, we'd go with an umbrella, and under the umbrella you're saying it could have this, it could have this, it could have this, it could have this, and nothing else. And so for each could have, we say, okay, it'll be, the walnut ones will be identification number W3, and the pistachio ones will be identification P3, and that goes on the label. And so we have a record of that range of products that are under the umbrella, because the concern seems to be if enforcement walks in, school principal calls up and says, hey, we took this off a kid. We want to know where it came from. We want to know what's in it. We want to know who made it. And so by identifying each potential product out of a umbrella range, and labeling it that way, then we know what it is.
Mr. Chair, I think that's a really interesting idea to explore, that all products could get their discrete number, because, you know, we have some licensees, like this one, who put a nice name on their product, Lady Gray's Joyfuls, and then we have a lot of manufacturers who have rosin. I mean, we have, I don't know, a ton, half a dozen products called rosin, and so if each one had a discrete number, it would help us to identify kind of what we're talking about and differentiate between different manufacturers, and so we can certainly explore that.
Yeah, let's kind of integrate that into the thinking with we propose. But anyways, back to the motion at hand, which is Lady Grey tincture. Is there any additional discussion on approving this product? I'm not seeing any. Then all those in favor of approving Lady Grey's tincture, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, Mr. Jones opposed, passed 4-1.
And then, Mr. Chair, if I could propose, it doesn't sound like the board is quite comfortable yet doing an umbrella categories for edibles when, you're changing an ingredient that might change the whole look of it. So my client is okay with not asking for that umbrella category, but and coming back to the board when the staff prepares an umbrella type of form, but asking for approval of all of the other updates, like the packaging updates and the changing to the label words and whatnot of all the other products. They're similar to the ones that were temporarily approved.
Right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
to save time, perhaps next week I could sit down with Ms. Weltine and the licensee or licensee on the phone, and we could go through this, and I could temporarily approve the things that were similar to the ones that were already approved, and then that could come back to the board for final approval in December.
I think that'd be perfectly acceptable. All right, Mr. Jones?
Easier than that's good.
Yeah, that's right. Someone's got plans to catch. Okay, yeah, thank you.
That sounds good to us.
Yep. All right. So that's a new world's record on a major list of product approvals. And I do want to say thank you though for bringing the umbrella issue up. It's kind of forcing us to kind of grow the regulations in a positive fashion, and as a result, I think it'll make things better both for the administration and for the manufacturers and for the consumers.
Because, just from an industry standpoint, it is happening already, and so we just wanted to, for it to happen for my client, wanted to happen correctly.
Right.
So, Mr. Chair, are you, is the board opening a regulations to work through this?
Now the motion's passed. Let's try to incorporate the idea of assigning a product approver. Certainly, just as long as the numbers are shorter than metric numbers. That's all I know about metric. It does really long numbers. Let's put this whole umbrella thing in as a regulation project.
We have a motion, a vote on that, on opening the project, please.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to open a regulations project to have staff address the possibility and potential for an umbrella products category.
Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of opening the regulations project say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 5-0. All right, so now we are at Secret Garden Cannabis at 3.
All right, Mr. Chair, motion to approve the operating plan changes, for license number 12768, Secret Garden Cannabis. Retail marijuana store. Great.
Janet Waldstein, attorney for Secret Garden.
James Thornton, owner.
Okay, so what do you got here in the fine print?
we have quite a few changes. My client hasn't gotten open yet, and went back through his original operating plan, and as he's gearing up to open his doors, realized there's some things that he wanted to change to match with how the building was set up and how the flow of workflow would go, and many small changes to align with exactly how Secret Garden is going to operate. Plus, this application was on the old forms, which had some regulations that have been updated, so we wanted to update onto new forms so that the employees had a good guide to follow to remain compliant. Let's see, updated multiple aspects of the security plan and where the 6 months of business records will be stored, updated description of secured transport box, and an updated waste management plan. Essentially, my client, thought we went overboard the first time and wants to make it more realistic for their operation. Do you have anything?
Can we please get a second on the motion?
Second by Mr. Miller. What is with this thing? My phone's off.
I think it's because you're right in the exact center of the room, I think.
I think you made a mistake. Speaker someplace. Okay, so your changes are regulatory conformance and some operational things that you discovered, like that you don't need to have the security company test your system because it tests itself.
He's going to learn how to test it himself.
Sure. Yeah. So you don't have anything on here. You're not changing the way you're going to deal with loiterers or keeping kids out and stuff. Okay, what was the change in your transportation?
The type of box was specified as rectangular and metal, and so we wanted to give ourselves some options there.
And that's other things, like we specified that it was going to be LED lights around the building. There's going to be lights around the building, but they're not necessarily going to be LED lights, kind of thing.
Okay. Are these changes identical for the other two licenses? Okay, that's all right. No, we'll do each other. So better part, yeah. Okay. All right. Any questions about the changes, operating plan changes for the Secret Garden retail? There's nothing that you saw that's really needs to be jumped out at.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
So you're not open yet, so you haven't had your bare shelf inspection. Okay, so when they come in, they will use this. Okay.
Assuming it's approved, yes.
Is this your waste? Is that a change? Waste management?
For retail, I don't.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of editing there we did, but it doesn't change the fact that we're still following the rules on our notification.
Right. Great. Okay, any other questions or discussion? Okay, on operating plan changes for Secret Garden retail, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that takes care of retail. Let's move on to...
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd motion to approve the operating plan changes to license number 12769 Secret Garden Cannabis Marijuana Product Manufacturing Facility.
Second. All right.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Not to confuse this, but process is important to me. Since this is a municipality of Anchorage and they're making a lot of changes like to the lighting plan and stuff, do these have to be with delegation? Any of these have to go back through the municipality of Anchorage process before he gets his approval from them to operate?
Yes, they're, and I've already talked to the planning office. They're going to be minor special land use permit modifications.
Well, that doesn't bother me. I want to make sure that we're doing it with delegation.
Oh,
so
right,
that
okay.
we don't go in and do an empty shelf and then 2 weeks later, Ms. out of Anchorage says no.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you, Mr. Jones. I will retroactively amend my first motion to include with delegation and make this second motion with delegation.
And to Mr. Jones's point, I believe all three of your licenses are in active pending inspection status. So the license has been issued. There is no requirement in the regulations for change forms to have approval of the local government. We do send them to the local government, and the local government may have their own rules, but there isn't a rule for us for them to approve. When we do hear back from a local government that they object to some sort of change, I mean, we'll bring that to the board, but they don't have a protest right on change forms.
Well, I understand they don't have a protest right, but I mean,
Right.
I understand the rules that Anchorage, even though we might go in and give him his license, if Anchorage could easily say, no, you can't open your door yet, even though everything else has been done because you made XY change to your building or something. I know in Juneau, if you guys issued it and then we found out that they needed to change their conditional use permit because, they changed their square footage or something, then.
Sure, they definitely may have local government conditions they have to comply with, but the delegation is usually to await an approval or a rejection, a protest from the local government. And what I'm saying is in this situation, we don't have to wait for anything from the local government.
So I believe that probably means no delegation, but just so you know, we are submitting a special land use modification after your approval.
Okay, very good. And I guess kind of the same question, is there any difference in the operating plan changes between the retail and the manufacturing?
For the manufacturing, section 3.2, if you scroll down to page on here, 4 of that tab, visitors will not be entering the retail entrance, like we said before. For manufacturing, they're going to be entering a different door, and that's so that we don't have visitors for dropping off manufacturing, vending, vendor shipments of packaging to through the retail. So that's different.
So you have separate entrances. What you're saying, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions about the changes for the manufacturing, concentrate manufacturing? Not hearing any, then all those in favor of approving the operating plan changes for the marijuana concentrate facility, concentrate? Yeah.
It's product manufacturing.
I'm sorry.
And I probably have also said that there's changes to MJO5, which obviously are totally not the same as the changes to the retail.
Yeah.
So when you asked, are there changes that were not on the retail? Yes, for MJO5.
All right. Let me get this right again here. So this is for license 12769, Secret Garden marijuana product manufacturing facility. All those in favor of approving the operating plan changes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, which brings us to tab 80.
I believe
79.
79,
I
yeah.
thought we just did 79. Oh, no, you're right. Yeah,
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve license number 127, or the operating plan change to license number 12770, Secret Garden Cannabis Standard Marijuana Cultivation Facility.
With delegation. Yep.
Sure. Second.
Okay, and so this is for the cultivate. And none of these three are operating.
No, none of them. They're going to be operating. James really worked hard to make sure everything started at once.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Where's your wastewater gonna go now? It's not gonna be collected in a wastewater tank. You don't anticipate having wastewater.
That'll be going into the municipal wastewater line.
Something that might be of interest to the board is the change to section 7.3, where we remove that harvested marijuana will be processed into batches of 5 pounds and replace it with all marijuana will be processed into batches not to exceed the current harvest batch limit for testing purposes, because that's still evolving.
Good. Any other questions, comments on the cultivation operating plan changes? Not seeing any. All those in favor of approving license number?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I apologize.
Sure.
Did you run your list of fertilizers and pesticides and nutrients by DEC?
They don't look at fertilizers, Ben, I don't think we added any pesticides.
Okay, again, I can't tell because for now they're all grouped together.
Oh, but we're not adding any pesticides.
Okay, I can't tell because the word chemicals would include pesticides, and so I cannot tell from this list whether any of those are pesticides. So, and again, we're helping this by separating those questions, but.
Yeah, I realize they weren't exactly in order, but nothing there falls on that DEC list.
Everything, every pesticide you checked on the DEC list, that's what he meant.
Great.
Yeah. But what he added, if you look at the summary, was only more fertilizers. But to James's point, he did test the DEC list for the previously approved pesticides from this board.
All right, very good. Then for license 12770, Student Garden Cannabis Standard Marijuana Cultivation Facility Operating Plan changes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, Urban Extracts, LLC.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Would motion to approve the operating plan changes for Urban Extracts, license number 14432.
Okay.
With delegation.
Is there a second? Second. Motion by Mr. Emmett, second by Mr. Miller. I knew there was an M there somewhere.
Yeah. Jana Waldine, attorney for Urban Extracts, and
Lisa Coates, owner.
Buddy Crowder, owner.
Okay. So what's the substance of your changes here?
so much like the last applicant, this licensee is not active and operating yet. The building is built and they're just finishing the inside interior. So there's just some changes to be made to the packaging and changes to the look of the vape pen and the e-pen. Changes to the logo. No, not changes to the logo, I'm sorry. Changes to the packaging because of the logo. And upgrading a syringe to a better quality syringe that was in the original MJ05. Do you have any others?
Well, we eliminated a piece of equipment and added a lab oven. DEC requires our wholesale products to be refrigerated, so we had to update the diagram, so product storage in the refrigerator.
They don't have the diagram in front of them because the diagram was approved by the director.
Okay. It was just a host of changes we thought we should come before the board.
What are the changes in your vape pens?
Well, our original intention was to put the logo, which was like a lead flake, and some of the manufacturers we were working with said, we can't put your logo on there because They're manufactured in China. They come, Customs and Border Patrol can look at that, think it's cannabis, and confiscate not only our shipment, but everybody else's that was with it. So we hit a wall there, you know, and we're asking for a little bit of flexibility there. If I go with a different manufacturer that's willing to put that logo back on there, I'd like the ability to do that. And as far as the product packaging, we're not changing anything on the inside, same child-resistant container, same everything. We were originally approved, and we said we would change, the package coloring would kind of indicate the strain type, whether it was indica or sativa. We would like to just have a generic type package, maybe one color, and with a sticker or something differentiate that, but all of the labeling and regulated statements would be on it. Yeah.
I don't think we've ever even considered packaging colors.
Well, and that's one of my questions. I wonder how much flexibility do we have? If I wanted to have this box white, which we intend to have white with a colored logo on it and black font, what if I decide, oh, you know, I think it'd look a lot better if it was black with white font? Can we do that? We're not changing anything on the inside.
Right, yeah, or the label.
And I would say that if this board's okay with those kinds of changes not being brought to the board, that's fine, but you need to send a picture to enforcement before it goes to the market.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any particular issue with them having the box with or without the marijuana leaf logo on it, so long as the child protections are the same, especially they're saying if the manufacturer of the box is the exact same. It seems like that's something that's of little consequence.
Mr. Chair, and members of the board has not, I mean, what we asked for is a sample label, and so we have many examples where the final label has been different. It just has to include all the information required. The board did address colors with one licensee a long time ago where they had like a brown and purple, like purple on brown or brown on purple that was really difficult to read, and so you requested that they create a color change that would make it more readable. So that would be my advice to licensees, is just make sure that it's readable, but generally neither the board nor the staff has exercised any sort of oversight over sort of the look and feel, as long as it has the required elements.
If you ordered 5,000 white boxes and you decided you want to go to a different color, that's a conversation to have with your business partner.
I do remember in Einstein with the leaf chews, you wanted the colors dimmed down on the box. That was like way long ago.
Yeah, I think some of that was readability. Might have been something different. Yeah, it might have been kids. Okay, so you say you changed some equipment?
We removed the centrifuge and we added a lab oven.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that opens, I do have another question regarding that thing, that sort of venue, if we decide to like add another vacuum oven or, you know, still using our same procedures, but we haven't.
I think if you're adding equipment, that's a, you know, one-page operating plan change. Yeah, you gotta let us know so that when they go in, you don't want, again, pick on enforcement. So you don't want them coming in and saying, oh, what are you using that extra oven for? What are you making on the side? Right? So we want to know what you've got in your inventory.
So we don't expect to come before the board for that.
I think we could do. It would, yeah.
You could get temporary approval, but that would be an operating plan change, which only the board has authority for final approval.
But the director could approve it, and you could operate temporarily.
Yeah, and something like that, you know, new T-score is pretty simple. So the label on they don't want to put that label on the vape pen cartridges themselves, right? That's what the issue is.
On the box.
Oh, on the box.
Oh, no, and on the cartridge.
And on the cartridge, yeah.
That flake.
Because the cartridges are coming. No. The cartridges are coming en masse, right?
China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna fill them, and then you gotta package them yourself.
Yes.
So
that's the problem right there.
That's the problem.
They don't
Well,
wanna
that's a little big to go in a vape cartridge.
Depends on what cartridge you like. But I mean, that's,
Yes.
you know, they don't wanna print that on there and be responsible.
Some do, some don't, but you gotta have a quality thing for us to buy as well.
Right. Okay. I don't think the lack of, are you gonna put any kind of a label by hand onto the vape cartridges?
Hopefully not.
Do other people have labels directly on their vape cartridges?
I do. But mine doesn't have a pot leaf on it.
Yeah, that looks like a sunburst. It don't look like a pot leaf. Sunburst. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments about any of these changes that are on here? Apart from, not necessarily being able to identify your cartridges from other people's cartridges now by lack of a label on there. Have you explored any options to have, anything put on the cartridges that they might do for you? That might not cause problems with customs, or attract their attention.
Oh, yeah.
Like they would.
Well, we had, the ones we have now, I think they put urban extracts on there.
On the cartridge itself.
On the cartridge itself.
Okay.
And then our pens, they use urban extracts, and they put in HE and...
Yeah, they have no problem with just writing the urban extracts on there. This is just a sample.
Yeah, I would encourage you to probably just go with that. Make that cartridge identifiable.
Yeah, and that's the goal of this. Is Ms. Jones has brought up a lot, and the Lung Association has concerns that kids are gonna get a hold of these things and not know it's marijuana.
Yeah, exactly, and it's branding too, right? I mean, yeah.
And it's branding.
Yeah.
A simple branding. We put so much thought into it, that okay, this is cool, it's gonna go on every product. And then they're like, well, we can't put that
Yeah,
on there.
but you can have a metal band on it that says herbal extract.
And every cartridge still goes back into a child-proof container.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I know that. But eventually, it's going to go to the vape pen and come out of the vape pen. So, can we delegate that you will work to come up with at least some sort of identifiable alternate brand label to attach to the vape cartridges? Because right now you're going to have just naked vape cartridges.
Well, that's what we're saying right now. We've taken off the weed flake and we've ordered it with urban extract. But I would like the flexibility to put the logo on. That is what we prefer to do. And I'm actually working with a vendor currently.
Okay. I guess if you found somebody that would do it, then
I would just if we were to change it, we would buy it.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah. You go and get another temporary approval, and again, it's a fast approval by us. That's nothing to do with anything. So, identity. That sound okay to everybody? Okay. Anything else on this operating plan change? So it's well, hold on a second now. Oh, you've got some, are these concentrates on here?
Those are all existing.
This is the existing. So the only change is the oven and the
syringe.
Yeah, the syringe, remember, the syringe is higher quality, the fact that the snowflake might not be on here, but urban extracts will be on the actual pen and the vape pen, and then the package coloring change, which, when we're bringing one thing, might as well bring them all,
Right. And just for the record, the syringe is for what?
The syringe is for refilling cartridges or for dabbing, inhalation only.
Okay, yeah.
So this is a higher quality one. I don't know if you've seen that type.
So that lets you microdose. So if you did one complete turn of it, you could control what you're releasing. Every complete revolution will click, and 50 milligrams will be delivered. Other way.
Yeah. And the reason I said just to get it on the record is just so that anybody listening to the tape knows what kind of syringes we're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's tricky.
Don't get any ideas, Brandon.
Yeah. That's really cool, though. Nice find. Yeah.
And the equipment change that we discussed too, is the other change.
Oh, yeah, losing the centrifuge, yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments about this operating plan change? Okay, not hearing any then for urban extracts 14432. Marijuana product manufacturing facility. All those in favor of the operating plan changes, with consideration for the possibility that they may be able to get the snowflake back on, and they'll come to you. And that doesn't appear to be any considerable issue. So, okay, all those in favor of approving the operating plan change, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll pass the syringe down this way for you to look at.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you. As soon as they put it back together. Oh, we gotta let these guys look at it too.
Yeah, I can't get it back out.
Okay, Cold Creek extracts.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, Cold Creek extracts in Anchorage.
Hi, this is Jason Brandeis. I'm the attorney for Cold Creek Extracts, and I believe that Cade Insco is on the phone.
Okay, you bet. Why don't you, here, anything interesting?
Yes, Cade Insco is here.
Approve license number 155, or operating plan change of license number 15594, Cold Creek.
Second. Okay, so, this is packaging for 2 of your products. Yeah, that's it, huh?
Yeah, so the change that was requested was to change the packaging from, to allow one to have the first product in a parchment paper rather than in a little glass jar, and then the other one was to have the capsules in a pop-top plastic container instead of in a plastic bag.
Right. Any questions?
But I did have one other question. I'm sorry, before we go on. I think one of the this is a pretty straightforward change. But one of the things we realized after we submitted the documentation was, I think the licensee didn't realize that this is what we requested was a complete change in how the product will be packaged. So that means that they would be precluded, or we're wondering, does that mean they're precluded from doing the original submitted packaging? So if they want to change back in the future, they would have to do another submission to change the packaging again?
Yeah, they'd have to do another operating plan change. But again,
okay.
If it's something as simple as, a logo on a vape pen cartridge or packaging, I don't think you can anticipate too much excitement from us.
So my question then is that I understand that, and I agree with that analysis. So my question then is there any way for us to, instead of requesting that we change the packaging, to say we want to add this other type of packaging? And I understand that the documents we submitted are a complete change, but would it be possible to have part of the delegation be that we submit a revised document that says we want to add this new type of packaging instead of completely replace the old one?
You want an umbrella of packaging? I'm having just a little bit of trouble not hearing you, but following you.
Mr. Chair?
The reason for this request would be there's different consistencies of shatter. If they're really stable, they can go into the glass jar and they won't basically fuse to it. If they are a little less stable, a little saucier, they're going to really fuse to that glass and they make it rather difficult to get out. And so that's where the parchment paper would come into play.
So, Mr. Chair, the licensee and his legal counsel can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what Mr. Brandeis was wanting to request was that the board allow the licensee to add this packaging to his existing approved packaging versus replace it with this packaging, which is what the current request is. So he's asking that you include in the delegation the ability for him to add it.
All right, Roger, yeah, no,
That's correct. Thank you for clarifying.
And now I understand that you're talking about the packaging is relative to the product, so, yeah, no, I see. Okay, so are there any questions on the operating plan change for Cold Creek Extracts?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I have a problem with the change in the pull and snap shatter. It says, currently approved is to put it in a glass jar and in a sealed Mylar bag. And what you're proposing is that it be in parchment paper in a sealed plastic bag.
It's sealed Mylar bag.
Well, it says sealed plastic bag here, not Mylar bag. And I was curious about whether the parchment paper, as opposed to a small glass jar, I don't know if that changes anything in terms of childproofing after it leaves the store. I also noticed that you had lots of different sizes or ounces. So I assume some of the shatter might be a one-time use only. I was just curious how that worked out, because it sounded like it was being changed from what we've been used to seeing in a glass jar and a Mylar bag to parchment paper and a plastic bag, and that didn't make me feel very comfortable.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, if we wrote plastic, that I might have just written that thinking plastic and Mylar are interchangeable. It will be that same type of sealed, child-resistant Mylar plastic, and we can submit a revised form that clarifies that.
As far as the child-proof resistance, it doesn't hinder that. It will be a sealed Mylar bag, just like the glass jars, which are not, currently the 1 grams are not pushed down and turned or child-resistant at all. They are put in the Mylar bag and heat-sealed.
Okay, thanks. And I looked over at Sarah, and that would be good if you made that change.
Okay.
Yeah. And through the chair, Mr. Judge, when you came to my facility, were we packaging hard concentrates at the time, or were we just doing vape pens? Doing vape pens. Okay. So for some clarification, yeah, the exit package, you know, from when it leaves the manufacturing facility on a lot of these hard concentrates is all the same. It's those child-resistant Mylar bags, but there can be multiple different small containers inside of there, depending on the consistency. So some of like our products have like a see-through parchment. Some have a little jar. Others have like a little cap vial kind of a thing. So, but the bag that they ultimately go out in is almost always the same. So, and that's where the childproofing comes in.
And can of caps in here. This is part of the application.
I believe they want a different jar type.
Maybe this black plastic bottle on the can of cap?
Correct.
Okay. All righty then. Any more questions on this operating plan change? Not hearing any. All those in favor of operating plan change for Cold Creek Extracts license 15594, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
Break? That worked fine.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
All righty. Coffee break is over. We will now, on the advice of the request of the director, go back to regulations. You have 3 here that you would definitely like us to get knocked out today for you? Not for you, but you
Yes,
think
Mr.
these
Chair.
are the burning ones?
Under the ones, so section C, where public comments have been received, and these can be considered for adoption today, I think it is very important to discuss number 3, number 6, and number 7. But it does sound like we're going to have time to go through a lot of these, so I don't know if you want to jump ahead or...
No. What do you think? Mr. Emmett, have we got enough here to deal with on testing work group recommendations? Well, that's a proposed project. Do we want to talk about proposed projects since we have a few minutes?
Mr. Chair, the testing working group recommendations were just things that you had kicked back at the last meeting to the working group to clean up. It should be a pretty quick thing.
Okay, yeah, let's do proposed projects really fast. So, Mr. Emmett?
Yeah.
Here to take it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a memorandum here prepared by Jed Smith, and it speaks to the testing work group recommendations set to summary. I don't think that the contents here are as substantive as some of the broader testing issues that have been raised. That was actually what started this committee, but more low-hanging fruit that we could knock out while we are waiting for the final draft of guidance document to really start addressing the issues that are at the core of testing marijuana and marijuana concentrates and edibles. And so these current draft changes accomplish the following: clarifies how seeds and cuttings are added to the inventory tracking system, includes the language crafted to correlate with the Department of Revenue, which was the reason why we had brought some of this stuff back, because ultimately if we had definitions that were different than the Department of Revenue definitions for different parts of the plant, it could create confusion. And then in 9, we've got a definition about the reference harvest grades and quantity. I can field questions if you would like.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Emmett on behalf of the testing working group?
Mr. Chair, may I add
Sure.
to what Mr. Emmett said?
Yeah, please.
So the language also not only clarifies how seeds and cuttings are added to the inventory tracking system, but the proposed language would also clarify that seeds, clones, and cuttings do not need to be tested. And then we add some definitions in there, as Mr. Emmett stated, to mostly align with the Department of Revenue, although the remainder of the plant also excludes clones, cuttings, or keef, whereas Department of Revenue doesn't. Their draft language is included in here. And I would also like to point out that the testing working group has agreed to inform the board when there is not consensus on any of the recommendations, and the majority of the testing working group was in consensus on this proposed draft. However, there was some concern from Chief Holscher and the enforcement team on the enforceability of the proposed definitions that are, again, consistent with Department of Revenues, and enforcement preferred the definitions that we had brought to the board at the last meeting, but that the testing working group had requested that you kick back to us. So just wanted to point that out for the record.
Okay. So what's your pleasure here, gentlemen? Should we move this up for some public comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if we're talking about tab 11, I would move that we put it up for public comment.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, second, any discussion? Then all those in favor of moving changes to 306, 435, 445, and 990, as recommended by the testing working group, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. That's out the door. So next.
Yeah, and, Mr. Chair,
Mm-hmm.
so there was a question raised by Mr. Jones to Addie's, which I think is going to be good information for the public. The testing work group has, quite a lot of scrutiny from the public. I think that we've got a duty to really address some of the items that were brought forward that started the work group, and those are the discrepancies between the labs when it comes to testing marijuana flower, marijuana concentrates, and marijuana edibles. And I recognize that those have not been addressed yet in either of these two drafts. The work group has turned over quite a lot of the scientific expertise questions to the state-sponsored scientific community. They are working diligently on a broad guidance document that could help bring these labs into a consistent set of processes if they were to independently adopt some of these recommendations. But we've heard from Ms. Milks that could be problematic. And so once this guidance document is complete, I intend to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, and there's a high probability that I'll actually bring some of the language from that guidance document before this board to be encased in regulation to set a standard for how some of the testing is done. I know that may draw the ire of some in industry, maybe in the testing community themselves, but I don't think we're going to get a truly consistent testing methodology unless we codify some of that in regulation. So that is something that's on my radar. It's something that I plan to try to bring before the board sometime before the new year, but we're not quite there yet.
Very good. Okay, moving on to staff recommendations. We've got 4 here. First one is kind of happy news. Some review, I'm guessing by maybe who?
Ms. Milks and I discussed this and agreed that this could be done through regulation, that a statutory change wasn't necessary to allow the University of Alaska to be a licensee. So upon the direction of the board, we would provide a draft regulation.
Okay, yeah, I'd certainly entertain a motion to start that project. Second one is under denial of license application.
Mr. Chair, so now that the board has had a couple years of experience, you have denied some applications, it would be, I think, so when you deny an application, I write the denial letter, and I have to say the board denied it because of, and I tie it to the reasons that are provided in 080, and I've certainly noticed that sometimes what I'm looking for what the reason that the board denied an application isn't really there clearly, and so certainly conditions of residency is a reason to deny, which is in 015, but only 010, which is the separation distance, is listed as a reason to deny. So updating it with the residency reason and then any other lessons learned by the board and by staff as to, why you may choose to deny an application would be helpful. I think it's just time to take another look at this section. And I'm not suggesting that you add additional, you're not looking for extra reasons to deny. You're looking for your experiences to be in regulation so that, in your experience, you deny when you see these problems, and that's reflected in the regulations to give your denial substance and weight.
Can we, as part of that, I guess maybe for Ms. Mills, could there be a stipulation in the regulation that upon denial, the board should have an established record for the reason?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that's actually part of the Administrative Procedure Act. You can certainly repeat that in the regulation. It's very standard.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that might be the easiest way to do it, because sometimes when we do make a denial, it's just, yeah, we all voted no, and you're like, why'd they do that? And you gotta write that. So I think that it should be incumbent upon the board to establish that record when we, take an action like that. So maybe if we vote out to do a regulations project, let's start with that. It could be something very simple.
Sounds good. The third one is about fingerprints. So AS 1738-200A requires each applicant to submit fingerprints when submitting an application. And because so many individuals submit applications for multiple licenses, you see that regularly. Generally the max is 3, although some people will get multiple cultivation licenses or multiple retail stores. So really you can end up with a whole bunch. But we have also seen that the licensee can differ, which I understand. I don't really know this for sure, but I understand that for tax reasons, sometimes a licensee will set up a separate LLC for their retail store from their other license types. So their applicant is actually different, even if the individual who owns the entity that is applying for the license is the same. And so based on the most generous reading of the statute that we can come up with, we end up sometimes getting multiple fingerprint cards from the same individual, which A, isn't useful, and B, requires us to collect money that we're not really entitled to. So I've discussed, and unfortunately we didn't really get this into our legislative request last year when they changed the fingerprint, the how often you have to submit for fingerprints. But I've discussed this with Ms. Milks, and she feels that we can correct this through a regulations project to somehow create an interpretation and a definition of some of the terms to state that we only need one fingerprint card per individual, so that we don't have a situation where we're collecting 2 or 3 cards for each individual, and
so there's a way we can do that in regulation before we go to the legislature.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, it costs the applicant money.
Yes, and it's so unneeded.
Yep.
So we'd like to fix this.
Okay.
And then the fourth one is handler courses. There's not very much guidance in the regulations about handler courses, and so I would recommend that the board open a project to make some clarifying requirements, including requirements that course providers update their courses with regulations changes, when regulations change, if applicable. I mean, not every regulations change is going to need a change in the course, but a lot of them will. Requiring them to provide course access to the board or to staff at any time, and establishing a course fee for the processing issues, and anything else that the board may need. There is this 3-year review, and I think the general idea is that every 3 years the board would be checking that the course provider has updated appropriately. But the regulations, especially in our first years in this industry, are changing so thick and fast that I don't think it's appropriate to only be evaluating this once every 3 years.
Okay. Mr. Chair, and furthermore, a lot of these courses are pretty long, and so if the board had to constantly read all of the courses to make sure that each course was staying up on the regs when they all came due for renewal, it honestly might just not get done. So I think this would be good to make sure that they're doing it as they go, sort of a thing, instead of having this monster packet for the board to go over right before they all come due.
Okay, so do we have a motion or motions on these 4 staff recommendations for regulations?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move to open regulations project on items 1 through 4 in the memorandum per as written.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Now, Form MJ27. I know somebody takes credit for that.
Mr. Chair, we did that yesterday.
We did, yeah, well, I guess we'll take credit for it.
You went up and
Yeah. Okay, oh yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. Okay, do we have any, board requests for regulations projects? Anybody really want to make that Excel spreadsheet longer? I think you might get off easy this time.
Do you want me to stop including some of the older projects in the spreadsheet?
If they're on the verge of, dying of old age, maybe.
No, I mean ones that are completed, that have been completed. Do you like to review your whole history, or do you want me to kind of?
No, we just, I like it. You like it, You like to see what we've done? Okay. Send them a minutes book, too.
They do.
Okay, all right. Yeah, no, that's fine. No, actually, it shows that we do something. Well, at least we vote, and then the staff does the rest. Okay. All right, I don't think we have anything to add for that, so let's move on to, what time is it? 3 o'clock? Yeah, I think we'll be close to done. Sample jars looks pretty easy. So, let me just say this about sample jars. I went into 2 establishments in Juneau. One had sample jars hanging on the wall with nice screen on them, and they were tied down by, aircraft cable to the wall. And I thought that was cool. Then I went to another establishment, and I wish people would recognize who I am when I go into their stores. Like, oh, who I am.
We can send out your photo to all the
Could, yeah. So I went into another store in Juneau, and their sample jars were glass apothecary jars with a cork lid sitting on the counter full of buds. And I said, if I was a sleight of hand artist, I'd be getting stoned in about 5 minutes. And I didn't like that at all. In fact, I called enforcement. I said, is this right? And they said, well, actually, the only sample jar regulation we have is for cultivators. And so there's this big thing here. So, sample jars should be used responsibly. And that's kind of one of the ways this came up. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just like you say, it was odd to have this very specific thing that cultivators could do, but not address this at the retail level. And we had brought you a draft at the last meeting that I think just talked about any marijuana display had to be displayed in this way, and there was a concern expressed by some board members that that was too restrictive, and you wanted it to be more about the providing the opportunity to smell. So we've revised it, staff revised it in accordance with what we thought you wanted. For those, do you have any, I know you and Mr. Smith worked on this, so.
I would just say, Mr. Chair, that at the last meeting, the draft was very specific to this is the kind of jar and the kind of screen that you have to have on it. And at Mr. Miller's request, we made it less about the kind of packaging that it was displayed in and more about licensee control of the sample jar.
Good. This will slip to you, Mr. Miller. That looks great. Okay. All right. Any other comments on the regulation for sample jars? Then to the motion to set it out for public comment.
So motion.
There, second. Second by Mr. Miller. All those in favor of sending sample jar regulations out for public comment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes 5-0. Okay, very good. Handler permit renewal fee.
Mr. Chair, this, we feel this was an oversight in the original regulations, that the $50 handler permit card fee recognizes the staff time and material time to issue the handler permit, and it would be every 3 years the person would need to come in.
They're going to send in a new picture.
They can mail it in, or they can come into the
Right,
office.
but I mean, they're issued an entirely new.
An entirely
document.
new card,
Yes.
correct.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to, send this one out?
So motion.
Second. Okay, moved by Mr. Emmett, second by Mr. Miller. Any discussion? This might be the shortest regulation we've ever had. Okay, and it just basically adds the word or renewal, I guess. Maybe not, anyway. Oh, it adds new or renewal. Okay, all those in favor of sending marijuana handler card fee out for public comment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye. No. Not opposed.
Not opposed.
I didn't get my finger on the trigger.
Okay, but yeah, you made the motion anyway. All right, okay, so that's out for public comment. Next one is following your approved operating plan.
Mr. Chair, this may, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, what's the point of having them fill out an operating plan and have the board go through it and approve it if they're not going to be held to it? But technically, it doesn't really say that anywhere. So this is sort of a cross your T's and dot your I's. Just let's be super duper clear.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion on this one?
Sounds good. Motion to put up the public comment.
Is there a second? Second. And it says, for the edification of everybody watching at home, a licensed marijuana establishment shall operate in accordance with the operating plan approved by the board. The licensee may request an operating plan change in accordance with 3AC 30600C. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of sending this regulation out for public comment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we got inspection parameters.
Mr. Chair, the genesis of this regulation came out of a recent enforcement case that the board dealt with it, where there were arguments made that the board didn't have any authority over an element of the operations that occurred off the licensed premises. And while the case could be made in the regulations that no, it was covered, again, it's a situation of let's provide a lot of clarity to state that the board has authority over all of the operations that relate to a marijuana business.
Okay, is there a motion on this one of any sort? So we can talk about it.
Mr. Chair, I move to put this up for public comment as written.
Okay, Mr. Bill moves.
Second.
Second by Mr. Evans. Okay, good.
Mr. Chair, so for clarification, this is the dumpster project?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
This is different from Kleenex. Okay, and it also, yes, go ahead.
I realized that when I read this, that immediately popped into my mind. There are, in pulling up from my memory bank, some of the premises diagrams that we have. We have, I think one in Ketchikan, the Rosy Creek Farm, where they have the grow operation, and they have all this other stuff, and then they'll have a storage unit for non-marijuana stuff. And that could be where they store pesticides, or they might, store the packaging before it goes out the door. I don't know. But, so when you're talking about other elements of the business operation, would or could that possibly include that? I mean, if somebody said, well, they're using a pesticide that's banned, and we go out there and all their pesticides are in a storage unit that are, in a corner way off, that's not part of the licensed premises, would that give us access? Would this kind of thing give us that kind of access?
my interpretation of that question is yes.
Okay. I just wanted to get it out there if people are making public comments, because I think in cultivation more than any place else, there are those storage units in a, at a place where they're not sort of part of the licensed premises, and it usually says on the premises diagram, not used for marijuana product. But there could be other things that we have an interest in, pesticides, insecticides, those kinds of things. Okay.
And that's an excellent point. The amendment to 3AC 800 does say that they can inspect the premises and the location of other elements of business operations, including any marijuana and marijuana product premises, equipment used in cultivating, processing, testing, and storing. Would it be a substantive change to add equipment, comma, and cultivation materials that we could, say includes chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides? Would that be a substantive change to this?
Well, since this is your first draft,
right, okay,
it doesn't matter if it's substantive or not. You can amend it before you put it out for comment.
Yeah,
you could amend it to say equipment and materials.
Yeah, I think that Mr. Jones is exactly right, and I think that would probably be a good thing to add in there. Because there will be, we know that, in the future there's going to be cases where where somebody's going to say, oh no, I didn't use DDT, and we're going to need.
You'll need to make an amendment by a motion.
Yes. So I'd entertain an amendment to that. You want to make an amendment, Mr. Jones?
I haven't thought about it that much. I just raised the question.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, I guess I'll move to.
Mr. Chair, well, I was just going to say, in here we have where it says other element of business operations. I think we've wrestled with the term operations enough. I think we've put what the intent of the word operations is on the record multiple times, and I think that would give us a broad enough scope that enforcement would be able to request that stuff because of how many times we've debated the definition of operations. So
the term including, the word including does not imply exclusivity to everything after the word including, does it?
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then we're good. Okay. So I think this is good to send out. Oh, we got a motion.
Still waiting for a motion on it? Or?
No, we do have a motion.
We do.
We do have a motion to send it out. Yeah, okay. Then we got a second. So all those in favor of sending out the regulations on inspection parameters, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Now we're moving on to extended video retention time. And we have public comment. We're in the column now that has public comment. So this changes it from 40 days to 90 days for storage.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So this regulations project was originally brought to the board by staff, and the original recommendation was 120 days, and the board rejected that. That went out for comment. The board rejected it, amended it to 90, and put it back out for comment. As you will note, we have about 7 comments that are in opposition and no comments in favor. And I just wanted to let you know about the requirements in some other states, just for comparison. In least to most, and I have 4 states for you, Nevada's requirement is 30 days, Colorado's requirement is 40 days, Washington's requirement is 45 days, and Oregon's requirement is 90 days.
Okay, good.
Questions? In the comments opposed, I think the one or two that commented about Oregon said 30 days. When did Oregon go to 90, if the public comments were correct?
So the section of the Oregon regulations that I found online stated that applications received or licenses issued before, I think it was sometime in April of 2016, had a 30-day requirement, and any licenses issued after that date, it was a 2016 date, I don't remember the exact month, were 90 days. So that if they operate, I mean, one would assume from that they changed the requirement in 2016, but I have not verified that. I will, I'm actually going to a regulators conference next week, so I can verify that with them.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so if we send 90 days out for public comment, I'm sure we'll get more public comment.
You've already sent 90 days out for public comment.
We sent 90, okay, so this is for,
either change
this
it,
is
put
for,
it back out, or
all right, this is for adoption, all right. Yeah, I mean, the comments are not real specific, so I guess I'd ask a couple of our licensees, is 90 days as expensive as people think it is?
So we need a motion on this. We're going to discuss it on the record. I'm not motioning to move this at all. So
don't look at the other industry guys.
You guys want to talk about it? One of you
okay,
guys
we got. Is there a motion on 90-day retention?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if we make a motion to move it on, and then we make an amendment, then it has to go back out anyway. Right. So I don't see any reason why we can't discuss what we want to discuss and decide whether it's a motion to amend and then send out for public comment or to adopt. So I don't know that we need one to have the discussion. Well, because it's coming back to us from public comment, and so that puts it on the table for discussion.
Well, no, because we have to have a motion to do something with it. And Mr. Abbott and Mr. Miller are correct that, we can't discuss it.
Then if you're correct, I'll make a motion that we adopt the regulation as written.
Second.
Okay. Motion's made by Mr. Jones and seconded by Mr. Ankerfeld. So the question is this cost is significant for anybody from somebody that's got 3 cameras to somebody that's got a dozen cameras?
Yes, Mr. Chair. So I'm opposed to this project in its entirety. I know very well that the growers are struggling from the top down, from the very largest grows all the way to the small grows, and especially the smaller limited cultivators. There's a lot of fear in the industry, and it relates back to this tax issue. I know I keep harping on the tax issue, but with this artificial price floor in place, and us, giving out an unlimited number of cultivation licenses, we're creating a large supply, and that, is driving the price down, but we have an artificial price floor, so the laws of supply and demand can't operate that they do in a truly free market, and so the growers are crashing headlong into this artificial price floor, and when they can no longer make a dime of profit, it's not worth it to do it anymore. And so I think that we've got to weigh costs and benefits. And so the cost to our growers who are struggling, and there's people going out of business to compete with the guy or gal who's going out of business, that adding this extra expense, which they get no benefit from, to potentially catch a bad actor or two is not prudent. So I do not support the project.
And, we've heard a lot of, this is Mr. Miller, we've heard a lot of discussion about, how long it takes to download 40 days. I can't imagine how long it's going to take to download 90 days. And it is the added expense, but I also feel like, there's a place in the regulations that allows enforcement, if they believe there's a problem, to talk to that licensee and say, you are on record now, you have to keep more than your 40 days, so do so. And they should do that and not penalize the entire industry for, 1 or 2% of the bad actors out there. If they believe there's a problem, then they should put those licensees on notice and make them keep even past 90 days, right? I assume that's the way it's written in the regulations. It's pretty wide open. So, I would request that we don't adopt these regulations and burden the entire industry. And if there is a problem, licensee out there, then they should bear the burden of the additional monitoring and not the whole group. So those are my comments.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, ready to vote? All those in favor of adopting regulation on video storage time, say aye. All those opposed, say no. No.
Nay.
No. And sounds like there was all 5-0. All right, it's the first time anybody's clapped in the last 2 days. Don't clap at my jokes anymore. Yeah, you never did.
Gotta get some new material.
I guess so. Okay, we are up to out-of-state investment and testing facilities. This went out, this was my idea. Got 2 comments, 3 comments. And this would, this is to allow, we want a good, strong, well, I guess somebody needs to make a motion for this. You got to say anything about it before we make a motion? Or see if there's a motion?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I was supportive of this idea from the start. I think it's a good project. I think we do need to expand testing facilities in the state. Currently, we have 1 lab that can test all products and a second lab that can test some products. We've got other labs that are approved. I can only assume that the reason why there isn't a robust competition between the labs in the state is just because it's so very expensive to get one started and the margins are lower than the other sectors of the industry. And so I think, again, cost versus benefit would be okay to invite some of the larger, more established labs from outside to assist these businesses. So a motion to be adopted or put out for...
No, to adopt.
I would motion to adopt the regulations project as written.
Okay, there's a second.
Second.
Okay, very good. So I'll just say that, and just thinking about this now, with the ability for non-Alaska residents to invest in testing here in Alaska, it might benefit more than just the cannabis industry. We continue to try to develop other agricultural sectors, food sectors, so there's certainly nothing that would prevent somebody from incorporating a cannabis testing laboratory into a larger commodity food product type of testing facility. And that's just kind of thinking out loud, but we do want, as Mr. Everett said, we do want a robust, strong, well-equipped testing industry here in the state. Mr. Jones.
Thank you. And I don't know about what you were talking about, but it seems to me that Mr. Emmett's intent is great, but this doesn't limit the financial participation to testing labs. So I was thinking, and I don't know how or whether it's necessary, and maybe it's an amendment if we adopt this at some other point, but if there is out-of-state investment, that out-of-state investor has to prove that they have some level of expertise in testing, I mean, I'm thinking if we have problems with our testing labs and we have problems with quality and internal and external reliability, and we want to encourage outside investment, then we should encourage the outside investment from the proven labs in Washington, the proven labs in Oregon, and the proven labs in Colorado, not taking investment money from New York City to buy more expensive equipment and still have questionable quality testing. And so this allows investment from outside for the testing labs, but it doesn't result in potentially improved testing procedures or somebody that has proven expertise. So I don't mind adopting this, but I think we need to look at that, because what we ought to be doing is, if the state of Washington has 10 labs and the state says all of those are good, and one of those wanted to branch out and open up a testing facility here and found some in-state investors to help them to meet this requirement, I think that's great. If Wall Street comes in and says, hey, I think, we'll invest, part of our money up here and see if we can't return anything, I'm not sure that'll improve the quality of testing. So that's my point.
Mr. Jones, or through the chair, Mr. Jones, I mean, it doesn't seem out of the question that you could have somebody in Alaska who has quite a lot of expertise but doesn't have the funds to open a testing lab. So that it almost feels limiting.
I don't disagree, but at some point in time when we were reviewing some of the early testing, I believe one of the testing facilities came in and said, we are going to use this test, or we're going to do this process. And we said, wait a minute, are they investing? And they said, no, we're just buying the proprietary property, or we had lots of issues about some of that stuff. And it just seems to me that what we're trying to do is get better testing. And money is not necessarily get us there, unless the people that have the money are also bringing expertise. They're bringing a proven track record of testing in Colorado or Washington and having met all those standards. And, we feel that by giving up the idea of it being an in-state business should only be given up if we're going to improve the quality, not just the potential money so that somebody that thought they could do testing and comes up $50,000 short can do it. So that was my only point. And this doesn't do that, and maybe we don't want to do that right now, but I just was raising that as an issue that if we're going to give up part of it, we should get something from it, and this doesn't necessarily get us improved testing.
Thank you for clarifying your point. Given the issue of regulations changes only applying going forward, if that is something that the board wants to consider having as a requirement, I would actually recommend that you make some changes, or don't adopt this and make some changes to implement that, just so we don't end up having sort of 3 categories of possible testing depending on when you put in your application and got licensed. Just something to think about.
Mr. Chair, I would just like to note for the record that all of the other regulated states are having the same issues with their testing as we are in our state. So while I totally appreciate your concerns, and I'm not trying to discredit them, I just want to note that we have received indication from all the other states that they're having the same issues as we are.
And I understand that. And when we were having the discussion about testing and when DEC did their lab, it was pointed out that the other states are having the same concern. But I also remember the conversations, none of those states had the variance differences as great as we did. And maybe over 10 testing agencies, those variances narrow because you have 10 versus the variances between just having 2. A little bit of my college statistics works out that way. But still, I think that if we're going to, I've made my pitch.
Yes, so I struggle whether I'm a yes or a no on this, and I struggle because we've got 2 testing facilities open now. We've got, I think, another 2 or 3 on the cusp of opening.
So, you know, they are Alaskan residents. They made an investment in this because they were Alaskan residents, and I'm sure because only Alaska residents could do it. So, you know, I really struggle there. But the other portion that really bothers me is if I read this correctly, if I wanted to invest in a testing facility in Alaska, they would be my first 5 choices, not to open a new facility. And I'm not sure how someone coming in and buying 50% of an existing testing lab makes things better. So, you know, I'm bouncing back and forth, and if you guys can help me figure out that last part, maybe I'll know which way to go. But
yeah, through the chair, Mr. Miller, I think your point's well received. At least with me, that is definitely a concern, is that if someone just comes in and like, oh, this lab's doing well, I'm just going to buy part of it as an investment. I would hope, that someone would realize that a large cash infusion into one of these businesses might make it better. But you know, we're talking about angel investors here. It's a very small portion of the investment community that would really do what we need to have, you know, happen here for the labs to stay mostly Alaskan and for them to get the money. But there are groups like that out there. And I'm not going to beat the drum and say this is perfect, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
You know, one thing that occurred to me as Mr. Jones was talking, and then it was kind of, get the pot pump out again, shattered when Sarah said, well, you know, all the other states are having problems. It occurred to me, maybe we should think about, and again, this is strictly for testing. I didn't propose this to try to open up any kind of a door for outside investment for cultivation or retail or manufacturing. But I'm thinking, well, as Lauren was talking, we get laboratories outside and seem to be doing okay. Maybe we could look at reciprocal licensing for a laboratory that's operating, that's in good standing in a state that has legal marijuana. They can come and maybe they would have to apply to make the investment on the strength of their ability, which would make for some real interesting applications. But you know, it's still cutting both ways. The point about somebody can come in and they can go, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy half of ABC testing laboratory. We've got how many testing licenses do we have out now? 4.
There are 2 operating labs, although, as one of you guys mentioned, one of them, it doesn't test for all required tests. There's one that should shortly be opening in Fairbanks and one that should shortly be opening in Ketchikan. There is an approved licensee in Juneau who was approved in like 2016, and we'll be coming back to the board soon.
So
I mean, you've already talked to her once, and she said, oh yeah, like 6
And then
months.
we have one that lost its facility, but it's still licensed, right?
No, they
No.
their license.
Oh,
Because once you lose your location, you can't have that license. But I have been told that they have a new location actually here in Kenai, but I don't know if we've received an application yet, but we anticipate getting an application soon, but we don't. But they're not licensed right now.
So what that kind of tells me is that we don't have an immediate shortage of testing facilities, or in the short term we will not, and that it is Alaskan investment that's going in there. So I would almost be inclined to, you know, let's wait and see what happens in the testing regime before we open up the door again. I think it might be interesting to look at some reciprocal licensing. You know, maybe when you're at the regulating conference, you know, kick that around. Because if we want somebody coming up here, we don't want somebody investing in testing just so they can make money, because we know there's not a lot of money to get made in testing anyway. So that's not a good hook. If somebody's going to come up here that's already in the testing business, we want them coming here because they know they can do a good job and they can provide a quality service. So I wouldn't feel bad if we, just, maybe left this one on the table, or just, can we just leave this on the table? We've got a motion.
I can withdraw my motion. I'm not tied to this project, so I'll withdraw my motion.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would be willing to see if I can't get some ideas along my thought pattern, and I think, and maybe keep some of the things that Mr. Emmett's interested in. If you would allow me to work with that and maybe bring back some language in December,
Sure.
Then, staff can noodle around with that after December and put it out for public comment or whatever. But I understand all the arguments, but my biggest concern is we need to have quality testing and testing that we can rely on, and if we're going to open up for financial stuff, we should get some reward from that.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
I'd be
I
more
think
than
Mr.
happy to
Jones
try to do that before December.
Okay, that works.
I agree. I think he makes a really good point. If we're going to open it up, we need to know that it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. Okay, let's leave this one here and move on to, definition of residency. Didn't we fight over this one a couple of years ago?
I think so, yeah.
Mr. Chair, there's been a lot of discussion before the board about residency. As you may recall, somebody can live in Alaska but not be considered a resident for the purposes of marijuana licensing because they're not eligible for a permanent fund dividend. And the board talked about changing the standard, but ultimately left it with eligibility for a permanent fund dividend. And so we did, this regulations project does attempt to amend the definition of resident of the state to be more clear, partially because when you apply for a dividend, you're attesting to your residency for the prior year, and so it gets very confusing about what year you're talking about. But the other issue is one that Mr. Miller has spoken passionately about, which is that, what if you're several years into being a licensed business and, your parents who live out of state get sick and you have to travel out of state a great deal to care for them, and so for that year you don't you're not eligible for a permanent fund dividend because you traveled too much, but you have no intention of, you're not leaving Alaska, you're not moving out of state, you just had this issue in your life that required you to not get a PFD for that year, and he, and that's a really reasonable issue. So this creates a new section at 306035 that says during renewal, the board may renew a license where one or more licensees is not considered a resident of the state if the licensee submits documentation to the board's satisfaction that, the licensee their primary residence is in Alaska, they have good cause for not meeting the residency requirement, and that the cause is clearly a temporary cause and not a permanent cause. This did go out for comment. We received 2 comments, which you can see on the final page. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I had a question especially about the last section. And this may be a little bit of convoluted discussion, but pardon me, but this is my thought pattern. Recently in the news, there were several people in Anchorage who lost their property tax deduction of the first $150 because while they were residents, they were out of state long enough that they didn't qualify for the PFD. And Anchorage had passed a particular ordinance that said if you don't qualify for the permanent fund dividend, you lose your senior citizens tax deduction. So I checked with the city attorney in Juneau because I had several people say, well, that happened to me here. And while we don't have ordinances about that, our tax division has, looking at the state statute and other things, sort of applied that. And so far, nobody's taken us to court over that issue. But I asked the city attorney, well, what if somebody, given all of the arguments about the PFD that's going on in the state, if somebody, like a couple people that complained, is that they were just so fed up with all this issue, they just stopped applying for the PFD because they didn't want to have to fill out all the paperwork because they were gone 120 days one year and 190 days the next year, and they didn't want to arrange their travel schedule for the PFD. So they just flat don't apply. And sort of none of this gets into that. If somebody, for whatever reason, chooses to be a resident of the state of Alaska and not apply for a PFD, one, they've never been determined ineligible because they've never applied. They won't be on any of the rolls, but they would be a resident. So that's sort of what got me in this last section of, if, as part of the renewal application, the licensee submits documentation to the board, would somebody do that simply saying, I'm a resident, but I've never applied for my PhD. I don't intend to apply for my PhD, and therefore, here's all the information.
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, so you may recall that we have a form, the MJ-18, which we use for people who choose, for whatever reason, not to apply for a PFD. So if someone doesn't apply, then they have to fill out this MJ-18, which essentially asks the same questions that are asked on the PFD form. And that form is forwarded to the Enforcement Division, and the Enforcement Division does an investigation as to whether that person meets the eligibility criteria for a PFD, whether or not they've chosen to apply for one. You may recall at the last meeting, there was a question regarding one licensee's renewal application when he had filled out his MJ-18, and it appeared that he had filled it out fraudulently, and the board denied renewal in that situation. So there is a mechanism, if somebody chooses not to apply for a PFD for whatever reason, for them to provide us with the information for us to assess their eligibility for the PFD for the purposes of meeting the definition of resident of a state, the state.
Okay, you like the way this is written? The second part.
Yeah, it's acceptable. I'm still not happy about it, but it's better than nothing.
Okay.
We're aboard.
Yeah. I still think we could go to the legislature and change what organizations can apply for licenses, but that's, the two comments we got actually are almost, well, they're identical, and they don't really address what the regulation does. So
Maybe just copied and pasted.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we don't have a motion.
No, I know we
yet.
don't have a motion.
It's a multiple regulation.
Yeah. Okay, do we have a motion on this regulation? That's what I'm asking the board.
I would move that we go to adopt.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ankerfeld. Any more discussion on this? Okay, we ready to vote? Given the gravity of this one, we'll do a roll call. Mr. Ankerfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Emmett?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that one is adopted. Next will be license conversion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board initiated this project discussing a desire to allow a pathway for licensees who have limited cultivation licenses to transition into a standard cultivation license rather than starting the whole process from scratch. And as staff worked on this project, we expanded it to also allow a concentrate manufacturing licensee to expand to a full product manufacturing facility license, and then also to allow the other way if the licensee who holds the sort of larger license type wants to shrink their business and go to the smaller license type. As I believe I explained at the last meeting when this went out for comment, because of the important requirements relating to public notice and that sort of thing, there was not an enormous amount of ways in which we could shorten or reduce the application processing and the period. But what we do propose is that, let me remind myself of what we proposed. The most demanding and time-consuming pieces of the application, which are the operating plans and the premises diagram, would not need to be submitted with a conversion application unless they were requesting changes. So those are the elements of the application process that take the most time for the examiners to review, and that's where we end up with the majority of, well, I don't know if I can defend that statement. I'm not going to make it. But we did explain all this to the board at the last meeting. It went out for comment and didn't receive any public comments.
Mr. Chair. Question. I believe we had a limited liability that we approved yesterday. One of my questions was, you've got a 1,200-foot facility and you're only going to use 490 feet of it. Why didn't you apply? Well, they weren't sure, but they might in the future. So if they went through this conversion process, they would have to do a premises diagram, wouldn't they? Because they pretty much altering, because they would be sort of doubling the canopy. But you were saying in this regulation they wouldn't need to do that unless they were changing significantly. So how would a limited go to a standard without pretty significant change in the premises diagram?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, I think in that scenario they would definitely need to submit a new premises diagram because that would be a change, but I could theoretically imagine a concentrate manufacturer going to a product manufacturer where they may not have significant changes to the premises diagram.
I don't disagree with that,
but no, in
my first thought was
example,
the cultivation.
In your example, they would definitely need to submit a new premises diagram.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt the license conversion regulation.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Moving second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting license conversion regulations signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes 5-0. Now we are up to ownership change without licensee change, license expiration for renewal, wholesale concentrates to retail license. This is kind of an umbrella regulation.
Mr. Chair, this is actually 3 separate projects that have been bundled together for administrative purposes. So the board will need to address each one separately, adopt or reject each one separately.
Okay.
So ownership change without licensee change. The board asked us to explore options regarding ownership change when the actual persons involved were not changing. Again, the most demanding and time-consuming piece of the application, the operating plans and the premises diagram, would most likely not need to change, and so if they certify that there are no changes, they would not need to submit those. Those would not need to be re-reviewed, et cetera, et cetera. So that is in section 306045, which is on page 3 of the Mr. Chair, may I have 2 minutes to just make sure I'm connecting the right pieces of the regulation to the right topic?
You bet.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, while Director McConnell is doing that, I would just like to request that when the board members decide to make motions for these projects, that they just use the title of that particular project versus trying to get the specific regulation citations in there, because we don't want to miss one like we had done with a previous project. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would motion to adopt project titled Ownership Change Without Licensee Change.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded to adopt ownership change without licensing change. Any discussion?
It was a good project, removed some bureaucracy from the process.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adopting ownership change without licensee change, hold on a second.
Well, I apologize. The concern is that when we bundle these projects, which the Department of Law likes us to do, but I think it makes it too confusing, is that we sort of have to identify which section of regulations within the packet. So in the draft, it's done in the order in which it appears within the 3 AAC 306,
Okay.
but so that mixes up all the topics. And so what we need you to do is to identify which sections belong to each topic, and that's what I'm trying to do before you act.
All right,
So
that's fine. We'll give you another minute or two or three. Yeah. There you go.
Giving me your proxy?
Yeah.
That might be dangerous.
What did I vote for?
Could have some fun.
Brian Zinke is fired from the Department of Interior Inspector General. The guy's been there for 10 years. The guy's been there for 10 years. Inspector General, been there for 10 years.
Wow.
I'm set for whenever Mr. Jones comes back.
Okay.
Losing everybody.
I guess so. I want to hear our public comments, or board member comments. Goodness gracious. Well, Erica, go ahead, and so what do we need to put in the motion?
For your motion for the ownership change without licensee change, you would be adopting the amendment shown to 3 AAC 306045 to add a new subsection E, which is shown on page 3 of the draft.
Okay. Easy enough.
Okay, so amend my motion to adopt ownership change without licensee change to address sections 045 and add a new subsection E on page 4 of the draft.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So next would be license expiration for renewal.
So to clarify that, this has 5 changes, all relating to section 306035. And this makes clarifications about what licenses are required to renew at every given renewal season, because we have licensees that are, the license is issued and they're in active pending inspection status, but the board has decided that you do not have to renew unless you are in active operating status. So this provides clarity as to which licensees are required to renew every particular year.
And that's 035A.
There's 5 different changes to 035, which all relate to this project.
Repeal.
Mr. Chair, I would motion to approve the changes in 306035 titled license expiration for renewal, or excuse me, adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any more discussion on this? Not hearing any. All those in favor of adopting license expiration for renewal regulations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
There's another space there for a second. I want to say aye, yeah, affirmative.
Okay, yeah. We all agree. You're voting yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And the last one is wholesale concentrates to retail licensee.
Mr. Chair, the current regulations limit product manufacturing facilities to wholesale only products that are not edible products to another product manufacturing facility. They're not allowed to wholesale to a retail store. So this amends that to allow product manufacturing and concentrate manufacturing facilities to sell or transfer wholesale packages of concentrates to retail stores so that retailers may sell concentrates deli style. And that change is to 306.565C. I don't think I put on the record at any point that none of these three projects received any public comment.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So this one has a bit of a similar issue that I was recused from before about the vape pen filling.
Yep.
So I'm going to recuse myself
that's
on
fine.
this one as well.
Thank you, Mr. I'm going to just recuse myself. Okay, is there a motion on the amendment to 306.565C?
Mr. Chair, I vote to approve, yes.
Move to approve.
Vote to approve.
Move to
Adopt.
You move to adopt.
I'm still in another space.
You should have been here 2 years ago.
Why did you recuse yourself, Brandon? You're the guy.
Okay, so there's a motion.
Sorry, yeah.
There's a motion
I can clarify why I'm recused.
You want to whisper in my ear?
There's the potential for a conflict there, and if I'm speaking specifically about whether selling bulk concentrates in vape pen is packaging or is manufacturing, because I have a heavy vested interest in it. 70% of my business is vape pens. I'm currently the largest manufacturer of vape pens in the state. So that's why.
Sure. No, that's fine. If you believe you got a conflict, we're not going to argue with you. Okay, so there's a motion to adopt. Okay, is there a second? Second. Okay, and the reference to deli style is that a concentrate manufacturer actually it says a product manufacturing facility, which I guess would include concentrate manufacturers.
Concentrate manufacturers have all of the rights and privileges except certain things.
Yeah. Can transfer concentrates to another product manufacturer or to a retail store in wholesale packages not to exceed 5 pounds. So, any discussion on this? Okay, and all those in favor of
Mr. Chair?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
I would just point out that that the issue that Mr. Emmett was just talking about isn't clearly addressed in this current draft.
Sure.
And so I don't know if you guys want to have that discussion about the fact that it doesn't address whether a retail store would then be able to fill vape pens.
I don't. Well, we can't really have that discussion on this. I mean, we're talking about along a specific action that may come up down the line, but you cannot do that without a manufacturing license. I think we'll discuss that, but not on this regulation.
Mr. Chair, the direction of AMCO at this time has been that retailers are not allowed to fill vape pens.
Yeah. And so, okay. Yes,
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Is there a definition someplace else of a concentrate? And the reason that I ask that is we approve a lot of quote concentrates not for retail. You know, can of butter, coconut oil. And so I could, you know, somebody wants to bake their own brownies, and so they go to a retail store and they buy a pound of butter, can of butter, that, you know, a 5-pound block has been sent to a retailer and they've got it in the refrigerator versus, you know, a concentrate that I've seen or other concentrate manufacturers do that fill vape pens, or we've heard people talk about the various consistencies of shatter or that kind of stuff, which we consider to be a concentrate. So, well, I guess shatter is also, we've already approved that for retail.
Yeah.
So I was real confused about this and should have asked earlier, but unless there's some definition
we do have a definition. It's in the 900 section. It's concentrate or marijuana concentrate means resin, oil, wax, or any other substance produced by extracting or isolating cannabinoids, THC, or components from a marijuana plant or from materials harvested from a marijuana plant. So we do have a concentrate definition. And so other products
would that include can of oil? Would that include can of butter?
Yeah, it would, except that those are refrigerable.
No, I'm sorry.
That doesn't play, does it?
The except is prohibited in 3 AAC 306.555B2 in the very first sentence. 55, let me just look that up. 555B2 is the food-based marijuana concentrate, you know, butter, olive oil, may not be prepared as standalone edible products for sale. So those things, butter, the food-based concentrates, may not be wholesaled.
Yeah. So the intent here is to allow deli style, and I don't even know how attractive this is going to be to the average retailer. It may not be. You know, it may not be. So. Okay. Any more discussion on this regulation? Okay. Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of adopting the amendment to 3AC 306.565C?
Could I ask for a roll call vote?
Sure, of course. Mr. Ankerfeld?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
No.
And I'll vote yes. So that is adopted.
Like to rejoin the meeting?
All righty, I guess we'll let you, as long as you bring coffee. Okay, expiration of public notice, which is one of the ones that you wanted us to get done.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I've talked to the board in the past, there are times when the public notice is given at the very beginning of application initiation, but the applicant doesn't move forward with the remaining elements of the application for months, if not, you know, a year or more. So you have kind of the public being alerted that there's going to be an application, and then nothing happens for a really long time, and the public loses, you know, if somebody was like, oh, I really want to address that, it can be difficult, you know, that notice becomes stale and the public is not alerted that there's the application is continuing, and especially when you combine this with the fact that the objection period continues after the application is complete. We've proposed a project that requires the public notice, the mandated public notice, to be given within the 90 days preceding the submittal of all of the application requirements. And this is actually consistent with alcohol, except the alcohol public notice has to be within 60 days of the application submittal. So this is actually a little bit longer. The other thing that this does is, so 025, 306.025, let's see, which is it? F has this 90-day completion requirement, and that is used and intended to be used for once the, if an incomplete letter is given, the office reviews the application and excuse me, provides an incomplete letter to the applicant. They have 90 days to complete their application. We have situations where a license has been initiated, some documents have been sent in, and then nothing happens for months and months or years. And we would like to clean up our database, which also improves the search function by other people and seeing actually what's going on, the expectation of, is this going to be a real application or not. So there's another proposal that would allow me to give an applicant 90 days to finish submitting all required application materials. This is not something that is intended to be used quickly. In the fall of 2017, we started to kind of poke the people who had applied in 2016 who had never finished their application. And as it turned out, the majority of them had no intention of finishing their application. So it allowed us to sort of clean them out of the system. So those are the two things that this regulations project does, and it received no public comments.
Okay. All right, is there a motion on this one? Motion to adopt.
No motions.
Okay, is there a second? Second, Mr. Miller.
Can I ask a question?
Go right ahead.
And I looked at this and I was trying to remember back to what we had discussed, so we've had several in here where it's been a long time and somebody didn't show up and then we postponed and I think in Ms. Oates' report talked about from initiation to completion 6 months. So if I started an application and I put out the notice to the public and it was 6 months before it was determined to be complete, and then it came to us and we had some concern and we tabled it, it could be a year. Does this cover having to renotice that at the end of a year? I mean, somebody in my community could easily have forgotten that there was a notice up on that particular building, and in that year, is that covered here? Because I couldn't discern that it was.
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, no, that is not covered by this project. Not necessarily you, the board, somebody on the board raised that, I think at the last meeting, and asked us to bring you some ideas about that. So that's on my list of things to do, and we should have some ideas for you on that next meeting.
Okay. Thanks, that's helpful.
All right.
Could you then give me an example of when you might ask somebody to renotice under this?
So if somebody notices their application, but it takes them 6 months to finish submitting all of the required elements of the application, all the forms, and their fee, we would then require them to renotice because their notice had been more than 90 days before they had gotten all their application elements submitted.
Okay, that's more helpful than me reading the regulation. Thank you.
Renoticing happens frequently on the alcohol side.
Renoticing also reopens the protest period?
No, the protest period doesn't. I mean, people can submit protests early, but the 30 days starts at the time the application is deemed complete. And it wouldn't be deemed complete until we had the notice along with all of the other
protest
elements.
Meaning local government, citizens.
Protest and objection period. My apologies, I used the wrong phrase.
My municipality can't protest because somebody tacks up on a wall, I'm going to start a business here, but a citizen could. And if a citizen doesn't, and then renotices it, walks by and sees that, then you're saying they can't put in their objection?
No. I'm saying this neither limits or extends the objection period for citizens or the protest period for local government.
All right. We had a motion on this, right? We're not yet.
believe we did.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adopting the expiration of public notice regulation, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Good, and the last one, look, we did it. Last one is all licensees to have handler permits and effective date of ownership change.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These are two separate projects, so should be addressed separately. All licensees to have handler permits affects 306-320, 306-425, 306-530, 306-622, and 306-700A. The language, so first of all, 306-602 is a new section in the testing facility section requiring handler permits. There wasn't a specific section for handler permit requirements in the testing facility regulations section. But the way the current requirement was phrased, it was unclear whether, so it says currently each licensee, employee, or agent who is required or permitted to be physically present on the licensed premises at any time obtains a handler permit.
Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your access code followed by the... Thank you. Please stand by. You are being placed into conference in listen-only mode. There are 21 participants in the conference.
Probably missing and 306-530, section 306-425, 320,
And 700.
and 700.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Miller. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Chair. I am in opposition to this project. I was one of the individuals who spoke to licensees being nothing more than financiers. I know not just my company, but there's others. They go to all of their licensees, many of whom know nothing about cannabis other than they gave a cannabis company money. Say, hey, you got to take this course now. And didn't I have to do my fingerprints like 3 times? Now I got to take this course. Like, man, I hope I get a return on my investment here sometime soon because this is a pain in the butt. And so I think it's, I think it's just a little too, so I don't support it.
Well, we can always go to work for you. Get away. Yeah, I know we had some. I think we had some fairly substantial comment on this throughout the history of the whole idea from the during public comment in meeting. We may have had some marijuana mailbox over the last couple of meetings, but you know, I don't necessarily agree that this would be a big impediment to people having even a small financial interest in a business. I mean, even if you're a 5% owner of a retail, you're seeing some return, maybe not in a manufacturing operation right off, but I think this also provides us, you know, a way to have some accountability for the people with financial interests.
I would just add that I hope we're not doing this just because of one event that occurred, and then this is something the board truly feels is in the best interest of the state.
I did second this motion, but I won't be voting necessary. There are a lot of licensees, have investors who never have a hands-on in the business, and I think this might actually irritate those folks and maybe make less of more involved, and that's not what we're looking for. I did second it for discussion, but I am not going to.
If I could ask the board, how are we to differentiate which licensees are required to have handler permits? I mean, is if you have a whole number of licensees, is it okay that just one of them gets a handler permit? I mean, if they're not all required to, then how are we supposed to know who's involved, who should have one? If there is someone who's significantly involved, but someone else has the handler permit, is that okay? I mean,
Through the chair, Director McConnell. So I would think the people who are actually going to be touching marijuana should have handler permits. And I would think that the good actors, as a prudent business practice, would require those people who are going to be touching marijuana in the facility to have marijuana handlers permits. As we've seen, not everybody does that. But again, to require the entire industry to do this because of a couple instances that came before this board, it seems a bit reactive to me.
Any other comments? I think that the staff's concern is very legitimate. Actually, on the application, I don't think we have a box that says, does anybody even have a handler's permit? But conceivably, we could have a licensee who's got a substantial investment in a business who is barred by law, by regulation, from going behind the counter in the store they own. And that seems kind of odd. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be the case, but legally it could be the case. So I'd prefer to adopt this, and then if we can come up with some a better regulation, then I don't think this is going to scare away. I don't think people are going to say, I'm cashing out of the LLC because I got to get marijuana handlers card. So, okay, are we ready to vote? Do a roll call on this one. Okay, Mr. Ankerfeld.
Yes.
Mr. Emmett.
No.
Mr. Miller.
No.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. And that is them. No?
one more.
Got a little more, yeah.
So the last one is effective date of ownership change.
Where's that? Oh, yeah, it's on the same page. Yes.
And this is 306040.
Okay.
So the difference between an ownership change and a transfer was sort of, it's my understanding that it was sort of taken from the alcohol regs. And so that if there isn't a transfer of controlling interest, that it can be done as a reported ownership change. However, all licensees in the marijuana program have to meet certain qualifications, residency and non-disqualifying criminal history. So it doesn't really work that the ownership change be effective before it's determined whether or not the new potential licensee has a disqualifying situation. So this proposes to say that the ownership change becomes an application that is submitted, that they have to submit, so the issues of residency will be reviewed and they will submit their fingerprints for the background check, and then there's a new section D that says the director shall, so it's not discretionary, the director shall approve the ownership change if there are no disqualifications. So no disqualifying criminal history, no disqualifying residency issue, or nothing about the having an ownership in a retail, cultivation, or manufacturing license and a testing license. That's what all the other references are in that new subsection D. And this also clarifies, similar to what previous regulations project did in the new application section, it talks about the identity of members or managers in an LLC and a change in corporate officers in a corporation. So that's to create consistency with a previous regulation project.
Okay. Is there a motion on ownership change, effective date of ownership change?
Mr. Chair, I would move that we adopt the ownership change in 306040.
Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Abbott. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of adopting ownership change, effective date of ownership change, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Now we're done with regulations? Look at that, huh? Okay, well, it's 4:30, so let's hit the marijuana mailbox. There's a couple interesting pieces of correspondence in here right at the top. Maybe one for the testing committee about methanol. And somebody said they would pay for a expedited license. And oh man.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. That comment in the marijuana mailbox about paying for an expedited license kind of speaks to the schedule fees that we talked about. And I myself, for one, have spoken out against things that would cost the industry more money. But in the case of fees, I've heard from very many businesses that said, if I had to pay more fees, but I knew that I was getting a direct benefit in a more well-funded AMCO office, I would be willing to do so. And so I'd like to let Terry know that her comment has been read and that she's not the only person who has spoke to that. And it's something that this, we actually, I guess, have a discussion ongoing about that already, but it's definitely something to be thinking about in these subsequent meetings. That it might do us well to raise the fees to better fund our office.
And speaking of that, after you finish this, we probably should go back to that issue, and I did provide that revised director's report on your computers.
All right, anybody else see anything in the mailbox that they
And I got my smiling face in there again.
Well, you look pretty non-committal in that picture.
Yeah. Thanks, Phil. You're making me famous.
Yeah, the good stuff's at the top there. All right, so do we want to go and there's a revised director's report?
Outside the October
the other one. All right.
Folder.
Okay.
And I highlighted what was revised, which was only the headings of, it's corrected, it's only the headings of that one table on page 4 to indicate that it's the first column is a $1,000 fee going to a $1,500 fee. The second column is a $1,000 fee going to a $2,000 fee, and then ditto for the third and fourth columns.
Okay. No, you got to close that. Got to go to the folder itself. Yeah.
So if we were to increase the license fees, so if we were to increase the license fees to better fund the office, to get more staff, and we get that without the governor's approval still, right?
That's correct. That's sort of correct. I mean, this regulations specialist, we were able to get approval through OMB in between legislative periods. So OMB is in the governor's office, so there's some element of administration approval. In our legislative request for this year, we have to put that in, so I suppose it could get wiped out. So that's mostly correct.
My experience is when you increase PCN or you get a federal grant and OMB can go to ledge audit that committee of the legislature and they can do an authorization mid-session, but then you have to show it as a new, even though you might have had it, and legislature then has the right to go in and remove it or say, yeah, you can have that one, but you got to give up somebody else. So the legislature does, because of the rules, the governor proposes, the legislature adopts. So, and it has happened. Generally not if they have revenues for it. You know, you get a federal grant, you get this and that. But if it would happen that it came out of GF, I've seen that get reversed even though it's been approved mid-year. But this would be non-GF program receipts, which is usually not as much. Although they do want to recover what they paid out, so they limit our expenditures and we collect more money, they'll just take that to pay the debt, right? Is that the way I read your report?
Yeah, they might.
We really don't know. I mean, yes, they do want that, but I mean, I think you heard Senator Machicki here say that, you know, he's aware, I think this is what he said. If he didn't say it here, I know he said it to me, that he, you know, he's aware of the resource issues at the office. I think a lot of people are. But yeah, there's no guarantees in life.
It's nice to say that out loud in case we raise the license.
Yeah, really.
Nice to say that out loud. Everybody knows.
Okay, board member comments.
Well, Mr. Chair,
yeah, sure.
So if you want to explore raising license fees,
Yeah.
you need to open a regulations project. So if you don't want to open a regulations project, this issue will just go away.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move to open a regulations project to explore raising fees for active and operating licenses.
Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Jones.
Hey, I'm a politician, and when you talk about getting more money for my government, I'm all for it.
There you go. There you go. I just want to know when you're going to put your eye patch on.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay, we have a motion to open a regulations project to examine the possibility of raising license fees. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anybody on the board opposed? All right, thank you. Okay, now we'll do member comments, and we'll just do some wrap up. So, Mr. Ankerville.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for the experience the last couple of days. It's always a pleasure to be around such wonderful professionals, and I can't imagine a better kind of cocktail of board members and staff, and so thank you, everybody.
Sure.
Yeah, as always, thank you to the director, to the staff, and Ms. Milks. I know it's a tough job, and I appreciate it. My fellow board members, you guys really aren't so bad. I really enjoy working with you. To the public, thanks for sticking it out for a couple days. I know these meetings can be somewhat mundane, but there's some really important information, and it really helps to get the intent of the board. One thing I wanted to speak about, and this is something that keeps coming up, and it pertains to the events and why some events were fined and why others weren't. I want to kind of, if I separate myself from the discussion, I think the common theme is in how things are advertised, and I think that enforcement...
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Mr. Emmett, I appreciate the comments, but one of those issues is currently on appeal right now. So if you could just limit your comments to generalities, that would be fine.
Okay.
Very general.
If you guys are going to have an event, pay close attention to what the regs have to say, or what the regs say about doing your event, and make sure that you're compliant.
All right. Sure.
I would like to thank the staff, and I'm horrible with names, and welcome.
Can you put your microphone on so we have your comments for posterity?
No, I never turn my microphone on. Thanks to staff as usual. I try to poke my head in once every couple of weeks at them when I'm in Anchorage, so that's always fun. Welcome,
Michael.
Michael. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. You're pretty quiet up there, but it is nice to see someone else here. And thanks, Harriet and Erica. We appreciate what you guys do, and I do enjoy coming to the board. It is a lot of fun, so you guys make it.
Mr. Jones.
Again, just echo everybody else's comment and apologize. I been having some eye trouble, and I got some reading done, and I got up here and I realized how much I hadn't actually read. So hopefully I didn't disrupt too much, but we just got off the election season and just got our new assembly seated Monday night. I got home about 11:15 and was up at 5 to head to the airport to come here. So, and then the events around the lieutenant governor has been very disturbing to me, as he's a very personal friend. So I appreciate putting up if I delay things or ask stupid questions, but it's been a little bit distracting this last week or two. So, but I appreciate all the work we got done. I'm glad we got it all through it. I'm glad you saved the regulations for me, because I really enjoy those, facetiously, he said. But anyway, I appreciate all the work. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Jones. I'll say a couple of things. First of all, I would like to thank Governor Walker for appointing me and for appointing all of us to the board. And I think that the industry owes I won't say a vote of thanks, because I don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of days, but they certainly owe their appreciation to the governor for appointing the board and basically letting us run with the ball. I can say that I have never had any calls or influence from the governor's office or anywhere else on any issues. And even I've implied that I would welcome some guidance. I never get any. So I think that's good. Ms. Milks is, kind of an ostensible representative of the governor's office, a few steps down, but, she works for us as our counsel and does a very good job of it, and doesn't say, well, the governor thinks this, the governor thinks that. I think that no matter what people think of the job that this board has done over the last couple of years, and what hopefully we'll keep doing for the next couple of years, most of us, we have been able to do this because we've been able to operate very independently, as has the office. I don't think that the office has gotten very many, visits from the commissioner saying, what the heck you guys doing? In fact, the commissioner's office has been very cooperative, because we have been able to have meetings when we've needed to have them. We've had, funding available to go places. So I just wanted to, because at our next meeting, Bill Walker may or may not be the governor. So I wanted to thank him and thank the governor's office. I also like to remind everybody that Byron Millot's signature is on all of our regulations. And I think that's part of his legacy, at least, as far as we're concerned. He was the one who signed the first regulations. I think he approved the ballot measure. I think. Oh, no, it wasn't him. Huh? It's Treadwell. Yeah, it's Treadwell. Okay, all right. But he signed all our regulations, so let's keep that in mind there. Otherwise, I think the meeting went very well. Please do not take getting 75 things done in 2 days as a bellwether. I'd rather do 75 things in 3 days at least the next time we go to Nome next September. Thank you, everybody that stuck around, stuck it out for the to the not so bitter end, and I think we did get a lot accomplished. Got licenses out, and the time frame for these licenses seems to be pretty decent, pretty good average. It's not as long as people think. Appreciate that the senator came down, and I hope that the folks from Kenai, who have been pretty unafraid to speak their minds, got a better look at what we're doing here, and see that we're really, we're all on the same side to get the industry. It's almost beyond the point of saying get the industry up and running. The industry is up and running. We continue to feed it with new licensees, and I think that, public attitudes of the marijuana industry have matured fairly rapidly. So, and congratulations to Canada, who is now nationwide cannabis country. So, I think that that's all I've got. Is there anything else to add here? The next meeting will be December 19th is the hearing.
December 19th is the hearing on the on-site consumption regulations, and I think we'll probably start that. My thoughts at this time are at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but we'll get information on our website and in the public notice.
Right.
And then the meeting is the following 2 days, the 20th and the 21st.
At which time on-site consumption will be on the agenda. Yes. Okay. All right. I guess that's all I got. So we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.